Welcome to a Parthian Films Blabbercast. Parthian Films, in cooperation with the Snake River Theatrical Plagiarists Guild, is pleased to present the story of the 1927 Plum It Series. This tale is a part of the yet-to-be-released third installment of your Snake River Skirr travel guidebook. Purvis dug into his knapsack and retrieved a bottle, his sipping liquor number 7. The clown's jaw was frozen partially open, so it was easy to pour a couple of ounces down his throat. The man swallowed. Purvis nearly fell over when the man opened his eyes. "Nostrovia!" The clown barked and then closed his eyes again. "He's speaking gibberish, GB. Obviously he's gone mad. Or perhaps he was mad in the first place, looking at that get-up." Mad or not, it now seemed like the man may survive. Now, instead of a shallow wheeze, he filled his lungs with each breath. Color came back to his cheeks. Spikes kept the fire up and fed the man some moose broth he had brought along. That night, the clown and the dog slept well. Purvis Spikes did not. When Purvis gave the clown his breakfast sip of moonshine, the man came fully awake. He started to talk to Purvis in gibberish. At first, Spikes just wanted to humor the madman, but after some time he clued in. The clown was speaking a foreign language. Once that fact became apparent, Spikes knew the man had something to say. Lacking a common language, the clown started to draw pictures in the snow. Even with the aid of the snow sketches, elements of the clown's story remained a mystery to the bootlegger. It was awkward and frustrating for both of them. Even GB seemed to want to contribute, but was of little help. Slow going indeed. All that day and well into the night, the clown told his story, as best he could. The Clown's Tale. My name is Ivan Ichibom Schmeltz. I came to this country sailing on great optimism. My family and I left Russia and boarded a steamer to come here. The trip across the ocean was filled with great sense of hope. Hope for our new country and our part in it. We held on to a poster that advertised the dream of our new home. On this advertisement, a couple looked out upon a farm with happy children and bountiful crops. The woman in particular looked angelic. She held a massive bouquet of flowers. With her white dress blowing in a gentle breeze, she almost looked like a bride. When we landed, we were given a most surprising welcome. The customs agent, the man who represented the country, made it clear he did not want us. He made no bones about it. We were not welcome because we were Jewish. Eventually, most of my immediate family was let in because of 2 factors. We had forged documents. This farce claimed that some of us were actually the Smith family from Belgium, and one Mr. Jones from Denmark. The customs officer knew this to be false, looking at my father's big nose, but the lie allowed him to answer to his boss. The other factor was more effective: bribes. My grandfather, Igor Schmeltz, gave the Canadian customs officer gold. How much? I'm not sure. I only know it was most of the currency that we owned. We'd picked up some American dollars in Ireland, but I knew this would not last long. Most of my immediate family bought their way onto this land. Those in my clan that did not live the Smith lie were turned away, and we have not heard from them since. We took what resources we had and made our way to Saskatchewan. We arrived with 67 members of my family, 1 Jones, 57 horses, and 2 goats. We left everything else back in Russia. We said goodbye to members of our clan, our home, our possessions, our hope and happiness. My grandfather, Igor, had always been strong. Seeing our family divided on these new shores broke his heart and his spirit. We had always looked to him for guidance. Now he just seemed drained of all his power. He never got over saying goodbye to his family. When we got to Saskatchewan, it took time to find our own land. We did not know what to expect. This land was not the one pictured on the poster. It was flat and barren. It was hard and cold. That was back a year ago in September. Some Indians came by and seemed to want to help, but Grandpa would have none of it. He didn't want any help from anyone. Again, I think he was a broken man and not in his right mind. But what could we do? He was the head of the family. Our first winter here was miserable. There was not much wood to be found anywhere. No ample lumber to build the idyllic barn we had envisioned from that poster. We dug into the ground and made the best shelter we could. We lived like animals, in a hole in the ground. We are performers, not hunters, and soon food became an issue. When we were in the circus, we sought joy. We were trained to act. And the purpose of this act was to give joy and entertain our audiences. The onset of laughter and amazement was the ultimate achievement in our lives. We were not prepared for these new difficult choices. We had no real experience on finding joy within ourselves. My friend Bob Roth was more selfish and not so sentimental. Under his direction, we killed a horse at dusk, and that morning we gorged on the meat like animals we had become. That morning, we found our grandfather had died in his sleep. I can't talk about it anymore, other than to say that the great Igor Schmeltz had died of a broken heart. We tried to plant vegetables, but failed miserably. 5 members of my family have died since we arrived. The doctor may claim it was due to illness of the lungs. I say it was an illness of the heart. Eating a horse is like eating your brother or sister. It sustained you physically, but attacked your soul. We had become animals. Once I lived close to royalty. Now my neighbor is a gopher. Once I'd walked on the earth with pride. Now I bury myself in the dirt with shame. 2 weeks ago, we ate our last horse. My family sent me out to this wilderness to find help. I wandered in this cold until, I don't know when it was, but I was willing to give up. I lay down here to die, and now you have found me. You have saved me. For what purpose, I do not know. Mr. Spikes, I am in your hands. My family needs food. Purvis missed most of the details of the clown story, but he understood this. This man had a large family that was starving. Using pictures in the snow, Purvis told the man to stay put, and he would go get food. Late that night, Purvis and G.B. returned home to the still. The waif and old crow were startled by his early return and then shocked by the story Purvis had to tell. Early next morning, they had made a round trip to the village and loaded up a skid with as much food as Sally the mule could bear. Speed was essential, and the care package that Spikes put together reflected the haste involved. There was plenty of meat, but very little grain. The clothing was an odd assortment. Spikes got his hands on a number of great coats, but could find no winter boots. In his rush, he threw in a number of skates onto the load. He figured these would be far better than the footwear currently used by the clown, and Snake River is always flush with skates. Without much thought, he included a full case of his sipping liquor. This time, Bon insisted he made the trip with Spikes, and Purvis was glad for the company. They picked up the clown, and he directed them to his community. Spikes, Ba, and even Sally the mule had seen sorrowful conditions before, but they were ill prepared for what they witnessed. New Minsk was a home to despair. The Snake Riverians had seen and experienced poverty on many levels before, but the clown's community seemed to be totally void of not only money, but all hope as well. As soon as they dumped their load, Spikes insisted they leave as quickly as possible. Ba, despite his tender disposition, understood a man's right to privacy in troubled times. The trip home was quiet, and Ba settled in close to his pa. Eventually, the waif spoke up. "Pa, what happened to these folks?" "I can't say exactly, son, but it seems to me some folks just can't carry on without kindness and such. From the story that clown told me, his family was once loved and loving. Then they got it just plumb beat out of them. Eating that horse." The bootlegger just shook his head. "Some folks just can't stand the shame of being poor. A man's got to make some tough decisions in life, and with some choices, well, there ain't no choice at all. Did you note, son, how we're to meet them at that creek bed with more supplies? Why, we could just as easily get the food right to their doors. I would say that's a shame talking, not good sense. Now, you did make me proud today, son. You let them alone, didn't ask no questions. You been poor, but it ain't knocked the stuffing out of you. So when we meet them again next week, don't expect them to put on a parade or nothing. We'll just leave 'em be. Don't ask nothing and don't look 'em in the eye. They're afraid of what we might see." "I'm lucky to have you, Pa." The waif squeezed in tighter. "I'm lucky too." "Pa, would we ever get to the point where we'd eat our old Sally?" "Well, son, hunger can drive a man crazy, but I don't think we'd ever get that crazy. That old mule'd be a tough stew. We might as well eat a piece of wood." The waif smiled at the bootlegger's joke, then spoke to the mule. "Don't worry, old Sal. I'd never get that hungry." On cue, the mule hee-hawed her understanding, then farted a most foul emission. The bootlegger and the waif covered their noses with their scarves. GB, the dog, buried his nose in his front paws as best he could. "Well, son, I guess that old mule's just trying to secure herself a place of honor, like in her grave, and not on her dinner table." The bootlegger and the waif giggled off and on for hours, remembering that fart.